Hey everybody, today I'll be looking at the Turok Remaster. This specifically is on PC, but it just came out for the Xbox One just a few days ago. I'll be showing you the PC version. There are some differences that I'll get to later, but I'll speak specifically on the PC version for this section of the video. One thing to note is you might see in the lower right hand corner the dead zone graph is a little off center. I had thought that's because Turok's dead zone was off center, but it actually calibrates the center based on where your stick is when starting the game. So another thing to note is that the graph you see is a little inaccurate because my stick wasn't at the same place when I originally tested it. So this isn't quite accurate, but it's close enough to show the issues I'm going to be talking about. So to start, Turok, assuming this was centered, has about a 35% square dead zone. So you have to break out of this square before you see any cursor movement or acceleration occur. And it's off center, so it's much smaller on the left side than it is the right, because my stick normally leads to the right. And you can see just how big this dead zone is. There's a lot of all this movement I'm making doesn't do anything in game, except for the times I'm flicking out of it. And these corners make the dead zone even larger. Like square dead zones, you lose a lot of diagonal movement. So as you can see, I'm bobbing up and down, and I'm moving perfectly left. Same happens with the right, and same happens with up and down. It isn't until you break into these kind of green regions where you start seeing diagonal movement being possible. And with a dead zone this large, you can see how much diagonal movement this just eats up or restricts. One of the other issues is just the acceleration. This is basically the minimum speed you can turn, and this is quite fast. I mean, this is what you'll be trying to make precise adjustments with. As far as the rest of the acceleration from this point, it builds up pretty smoothly. There's no erratic jumps, whatever. But the low end, it makes it very difficult because I should actually remove the smoothing. I will re-enable it to show difference. But as you can see, this was without smoothing, so this starts out at the exact speed you selected from the start. So when making precise movements, this is very difficult. As you can see, I'm trying to kind of get into the broad range of this Velociraptor, but it's very difficult because both the dead zone size, this very fast starting acceleration, and the limited diagonals make this feel very, very clunky. And like I just disabled, if you have aim smoothing active to some degree, this mitigates the acceleration issues quite a bit because it starts out very slow. But ideally the acceleration would be able to handle it. You should be able to like as you can see right here, this should be the starting speed just normally without smoothing as well. But that's not currently the case. And that about covers it for the PC portion. I'll describe differences or show the graph for the Xbox version, describe the differences there. But yeah, just stay tuned for that part. Alright, so this is just the graph for the PC version. It's off-center, so I mean this is only accurate for specific things. If it's centered, it'd be a little different. But for the Xbox One version, it's perfectly centered, but it's noticeably different. As you can see here, it's very squarish, but here it's almost like a rounded shape, and the diagonal movements are kind of curved down. One thing to notice is that the Xbox One version dead zone is bigger, This is about 35% if you had centered it. This is about 45%, so this is 10% bigger. And anything over like 25% is getting ridiculous. So this is pretty enormous right here. You do get a little more diagonal movement than you do with this kind of pure square, but it's still way more missing diagonal movement than you would want. Here are the initial tests I did for this. So I just plotted points. Obviously for the PC version I didn't know it centered, so this again is only accurate to the stick position I tested it at. But actually tested both the Turok Remaster, the first one and the second one on the Xbox. They're both identical, so they both have this kind of shape. You see my graph's just an estimate, so it's not entirely accurate, but it's pretty close. But the most ideal kind of improvements we can make are a nice circular dead zone with full diagonal movement, so that would mean all kind of green would be great, and something with a radically smaller dead zone, so 25% or 20% would be fine as a default. And this is really the difference. The acceleration is pretty much identical. The aim smoothing, the sensitivity is identical as far as I can tell. It's just the dead zone that's different between the versions. Alright, so this section of the video will just be if Night Dive Studios ever decides to do an update for the game. Kind of what idealized controls would look like. So I've disabled the sensitivity, or set the sensitivity to 0 for the kind of in-game aiming, and set the right stick to a mouse emulator, which has these kind of settings. So we have a smaller circular dead zone. So as you can see, once I pass this circle, acceleration starts, and it has full diagonal movement, so you can move the stick very subtly, angularly, and you can see subtle angles occur. You can bob the stick up and down, and you'll see little wobbles happen, and you can see tiny little diagonal adjustments. And the acceleration starts out much slower, so you can see you can make pixel adjustments pretty much, and you don't need smoothing for it, so you can have nice snappy acceleration. And this maximum is about the same as the in-game maximum, which is pretty good. And this alone would make Turok feel quite a bit better. This could be a modernization compared to kind of the old N64 kind of quality controls that it currently has. But it'd be nice also to see an update to add like dead zone options, so to kind of lower the dead zone to make things even more responsive. So as you can see, the smaller dead zone, it makes aiming feel even smoother, and small or precise adjustments are even easier. And I don't blame Night Dive Studios for any of the kind of current controls, except for maybe the weirdness with the Xbox One dead zone shape. But a lot of these were issues in the N64 version. But yeah, just with a remaster, it'd be nice to see these controls modernized to make them responsive, or more responsive with modern day kind of smoothness. But that's about all I have to talk about. If Night Dive Studios, if you ever come across this and have the ability to make an update, it'd be nice to see these controls updated to kind of what you see here, where we have full diagonal movement, circular dead zones, very slow starting acceleration, and ideally dead zone options, though it doesn't need it, but it's always nice to have. And of course, the aim smoothing options in the menu are good too. If players want to use that, that's still great. The game obviously has still has auto aim, so that makes the default controls playable. So you can beat the game just fine with the default. There's just a huge quality of life adjustment. But that's about it. I'm finished rambling. Seeing an update would be great for this to help make things smoother. But that's about it. Thanks for watching. Everyone have a good rest of your day.